Hey, 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 it's a live day for the month of May, and welcome back to my kitchen. And so, first of all, what do we have on the stove? We've got a big old pot. You know what's in the big old pot? Fideo Loco. For those of you who aren't familiar with Tex-Mex recipes, Fideo Loco is basically Fideo. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Fideo, Fideo is Mexican rice, but made with Fideo noodles instead of made with rice. It's the same recipe, exact same recipe. So basically what you do is you get a pan, you put some oil in it, you toss some onions in there, you toss a little garlic, you saute it up, you add the noodles, you saute them until they get a little golden brown, delicioso here and yon. You add a can of tomatoes, chopped diced tomatoes. You add in this case, I've got a zucchini in there. You add some chicken broth, and you basically make a soupy noodle thing. You want to look at it? Okay, let me show it to you. All right, so we're going to flip you around. All right, so this is Fideo Loco. So what I've got in there is I've got some turkey burgers that I chopped up. I've got some corn. I've got some yummy stuff. You can add a little cumin if you want to make it even more authentical. You know, I personally don't. I just like it like that. And then boom, we got dinner. So normally on Thursday nights I have a meeting, but I actually have a very, very early day planned for tomorrow, so I need to get my beauty sleep. You know what my mom used to say? You know why she didn't have wrinkles? Because she kept them filled. Yes. So anyways, so on tonight's agenda, we are going to be discussing knives. Yes, knives. And, you know, I think it's really, really funny that my mom did everything with a paring knife. And there's this one lady on YouTube, I think it's from my ranchero to your house, a mi ranchera a su casa. And cute little Mexican lady. And oh my God, she totally cooks like my mom. And she doesn't use any of the equipment that one would normally expect in a normal kitchen. Okay, so like she's got a wood stove with a big giant metal tin on top of it. And she cooks her tortillas and she makes her sopas and whatever on top of a brick oven with a friggin' metal tin, you know? And then over the years, as you've watched her progress in her YouTube world, you know, she started out and then, you know, she got like a 1 million viewer award, and then she got more awards, and then her stove got better. And then she started bringing in her family and started showing her chickens and her veggies, and, you know, and she just started doing more and more and more. And now, you know, but she's still using a paring knife and she still cuts into her hand. And, you know, for those of you, you know, who've watched her mom, you know, she basically takes a knife and, you know, she's got a little paring knife and she's cutting into her hand. So she cuts the tomato, she cuts it up, and then she cuts it this way. Classic mom Mexican cooking. So, you know, so she used a paring knife, and my mom used a paring knife for everything. This is what's known as a paring knife. Okay, so basically it's a little tiny French knife, and you know, not to be outdone by a French knife, this is a French knife. Okay, which is not to be outdone by the pizza knife, which we've already talked about the pizza knife in a previous video where I talked about stabbing this into a box of cereal and going to work as a serial killer. So this is clearly a pizza knife. Okay, so anyway, so knives are the exact same thing as all the other kitchen equipment we talked about so far. You can go with cheap, you can go with good, and you can go with off the charts expensive, last you for the rest of your life. And that is like these, you know, there's these dudes in Japan that are making like these little mini samurai swords that are like insane, and the prices are in the hundreds. And then there's like super fancy dilly deluxe knives that are like in the price of the thousands. I'm mostly a under $100 knife chick. And I do have a couple of knives that are in the 100+ range, but for the most part, yeah, I get what I like, and I get what's cheap. And in the world of knives, your mom is right when she says, the heavier the better. So we're going to start out with the Pears. Okay, so paring knife is basically a small utilitarian knife that you use for cutting, you know, and you can use this for a little quick dice. You can use this for chopping, like, you know, like garlic, you know, making it all mushy, you know, and there's, you know, this is like a good knife for peeling, you know, apples. This is a good knife for slicing into an onion. It's a good knife for cutting up fruit. It's a really good utilitarian knife for all kinds of little choppy stuff. Now, they come in different shapes with different functions. So like this is the French knife style. This is a bony knife style. And this particular shape is also good, you know, see how it has a little grip right there? This is also good for like coring and cutting and, you know, all kinds, because all knives cut. This little guy, I think my husband got me. It's a good grip, and it's also a pair, and it also has a place for your thumb. And this is also for cutting small stuff, mostly cutting up fruit. You cut up a strawberry, top off the lid. You can, you know, slice it up. That's pretty well what your Pears are for. It's just very, very small cuts. And then I have one more pair, and this one also, you know, same thing. There's your grip. You know, that's how you properly hold a knife. Cut it up, you know, use it for all kinds of stuff. So my mom was a real big fan of these little knives. And I honestly don't remember a big knife in my house until I went to school and I started playing with big knives. So the next thing is, you know, there's also knives that you can get that are just, you know, this is what I like to call work knife. So like if you're taking something to work that you need to cut up and you don't care about the knife, then you can buy these little cheapy plastic jobbies, and they're not very expensive. They usually come in a kit, and you can just, you know, you can just use them for chopping. And then what's nice about the plastic handled ones is they can actually survive life in the dishwasher. I personally of the opinion that when it comes to knives, anything that you can cut with, don't put in the dishwasher. Okay? Even though these plastics ones are designed to be dishwasher safe, anything that you cut with, don't put it in the dishwasher. And the reason for that is the chemicals that are in the dishwasher soap tend to do some damage to your blades. And they also do some damage to your handles. So I highly, highly, highly recommend that if it's something that cuts, you definitely use hand washing and Dawn dishwashing soap. So anyways, so my girlfriend Eileen is on, and she's a real chef. She went to like a culinary school, and she owns a restaurant, and she's a fancy girl, and she says she likes a big knife too. So just for her, I'm gonna go, yeah, baby, we like our big knives. Yeah, so she knows exactly what I'm talking about, you know, with the big knife, and like I said, that's a pizza knife, you know. So the next type of knife I want to talk about is bony knife. Now this is for filleting, and this is the big sister of this guy. And so this particular knife, I told my husband I wanted a bony knife, so he got me actually a hunting bony knife. So like if you were out fishing, you know, this is the knife you would take with you if you were fishing, and it has a scabbard. So it's got a very flexible blade. You see that? It's real bendy. And the reason for that is so that you can get between the skin and the flesh of the fish, and you can just fillet. Or the skin and the flesh of something else, and you can fillet. And that's why it's flexible, is so that you can get in there, and it's sharp as fuck. So, excuse me. Sorry, but yeah. So that's a boning knife. So that's what a boning knife is. You want one with a good grip, good handle, and it can work on through. Now, the next knife I'm going to talk about is your utilitarian knives. Utility knives are slightly larger than your paring knives, but they all do basically the same function, which is cut shit up, you know, because that's what a knife is for, is to cut. But these particular guys are really good for like slicing, you know, like if you're slicing through something, or you're, I personally use this one to slice bagels, which is weird because usually you use a serrated knife. You see how it's got little boobie boobs? That's usually what you use for cutting through breads, okay? But this is for bread. But I like to use this one for cutting through bagels because bagels are dense. They're really, really dense. They're very, very hard, and they got some fight to them. So a bread that has some fight to them, you want to use a knife that can slice versus a knife that's going to sear, that's going to, you know, saw. Okay, does that make sense? So, you know, anyways, so yeah, so this is a serrated, you know, and she's probably going, holy shit, this woman's got hinkles. Yeah, I got hinkles. So Hinkles are one of the better brands of knives, and I've collected them over the years. You don't just, I mean, you can just go and get, you know, like a set of Hinkles, but no. So remember our best buddy, you know, our kitchen shears? Yeah, always make sure you've got a good set of kitchen shears because this will save your life. Okay, so the next time we're going to talk about is a French. Okay, this is about a 10-inch French, and you know, this is about a 12-inch French. And Frenches are really, really good for cutting up big things. So like if you're, let me move you down a little bit so you can see some cutting action. So, you know, I don't have anything here for you to cut, for me to cut and show you. But when you're cutting with a French, the objective is to move the handle and slice. So when you're cutting with this, what you're cutting with, let me see, yeah, back there. So this, you know, this rocking motion that you're doing is for chopping up herbs and smaller things, and, you know, like you can use it for slicing up vegetables and your carrots and chopping meats, and that's what this French design is designed for. Now, the other version of a French is this guy. So you can see those little groovies. This is actually a takeoff of a Japanese style knife. And what this is for is the same thing, just cutting stuff up. But because it's got the little ridges, this is really a good knife for cutting and slicing meat. And these little thingies help with slicing. And when you're doing, like, you know, sushi and stuff, those little ridgy things come in super handy so that you can get through the seaweed and you can get through the veggies and you can get through everything that's inside of a beautiful piece of sushi. So, but, you know, I use this for everything. This is just as utilitarian as this one, is just bigger. This guy's just bigger. So the next knife I want to show you. So, you know, as you can see, I got a couple of this style because I like them. My brother bought me one my brother actually bought me this one. It's a Chicago cutlery. He bought me that one for, hold on just a second, the Fideo needs some attention. Whenever you're cooking anything with pasta, you do need to stir it every once in a while, or your pasta will stick to the bottom of the pot, and then you're going to have a big ugly mess on your hands. So we're going to just give that a nice stir, bring all of the yummy bits up, and this puppy's just about done. So Papa's got some dinner. I'm going to turn it down to really low and keep it rocking and rolling. So, you know, I've already introduced you to, you know, the pizza knives. And these are really literally designed to go across a whole piece of pizza. I think these are originally Costco knives. You know, we got these, like, you know, I don't know the story of these knives. I'm not really sure how they came into my house. But I know I've had them for forever. And I got two of them bad boys. See that? I've got two of them bad boys. Now, the next guy I want to talk to you about is a bread knife. Now, see how it's got all the serrated edges? But notice the serration is a little different from this. See how this one is kind of a scallop serration, but this is more like a saw blade? Yeah, this is for slicing bread, and this is for really, really good for slicing fresh bread. So that's what those little, so they kind of tear what you're cutting in a sawing motion versus like this, which is gonna slice through. Okay, so so that's what that little, so these, if these ever get dull, you have to get them professionally sharpened because of all of the little edges and stuff. And it's a sharp son of a bitch. Okay, so and then the last knives I want to talk about is just good old steak knives. So I believe that these came into my possession as a reward for my husband fixing something in a fancy restaurant, because these are actually restaurant quality steak knives. And steak knives are exactly that, okay? So you see here, they've got the serrated edge, and that's for gripping the meat and sawing through the meat. And then there's a sharper edge down here, which is for also cutting the meat. So that's a steak knife. That's a good steak knife. All right, so now when it comes to caring for your knives, you can do it any way you want, whatever makes you happy, okay? So I bought this little chingadera, which is a honing, and you can just take your knives and you can, and some people would cringe, but when you sharpen with one of these things, it's got what is called coarse, light, and fine. So basically it's 2 passes per each section. So 1, 2, 1, 2, and then fine. 1, 2. Now, if you notice that, you'll notice that in the very, because I hadn't sharpened that knife in a bit, you notice that the first time I passed it through, it didn't sound very smooth. But by the time I got to the last one, it sounded very smooth. So here's another knife. We'll do it 2 passes. You hear all that bumpy, and it kind of sounds, and you can feel it too. You can feel that the knife isn't very well honed. And then you do it again, and it's less. And then we're going to move to medium. 1, 2. It sounds a lot better. Get to the last one. 1, 2. And it's not like a lot more smoother. Now, if you want to get fancy about honing your knives, this is a whetstone. Okay. Now I have 3 grits. This is coarse, this is fine, and this is a good old piece of granite, and this is super fine. Okay. So this is probably 800. This is about 1,000. It's about 2,000, because this is super fine. This was actually my neighbor, Mr. Bullock's, and Mr. Bullock, I don't know, he was like my age when I was a kid, and when he passed away, his wife gave me this. And this particular piece of granite, thousands of years old, in this particular shape, hundreds of years old, and it was actually used to sharpen razor blades. So if I want my knives to be super sharp, this puppy comes out. So we're gonna move you down again so you can watch the action from close up, like my Batman shirt. It actually says, "I'm looking for bad boys, bad boys, what you gonna do?" Okay, so this particular stone has been wet. I soaked it a little bit, so it has some water. And basically, you're going to pass your knife from stem to stern. And that's basically just getting the rough burrs. Then you're going to do it from the same side, and then you're going to do the other side. Same thing. You're going to just work on your angle. And can you hear how it's sounding a lot better? And then finally, you're going to do your final passes. And then boom, you got an edge. And you can actually look at the edge, and you can see kind of like flashes of light, and that tells you it needs a little more honing. And another way you can hone your knife, you can have a steel. Same thing, you're going to go by an angle, you're going to do a couple of passes. And what this does is it molecularly gets all of the metal in line. So, and it sounds, see, could you hear how it sings? Like the knife sings when it's really happy. You hear that? It's not complaining at all. There's no burry sounds. It just sounds like a nice, happy knife. All right. So that's basically sharpening 101. You can watch YouTube videos. I mean, there's guys who tell you everything you could possibly never want to know about, you know, knives, and they'll tell you all kinds of stories, and, you know, and keep you all posted, and, you know, and blah, blah, blah. You know, when you do buy knives, always go for people who it's their business. So, you know, you don't want to buy like knives that aren't made by companies that make kitchen equipment. You want to buy knives from people who make kitchen equipment. I've never seen a Samsung knife, and I'd question buying a knife made by Samsung. They might make knives. They might actually do, because they make all kinds of kitchen equipment. They make, you know, my stove's a Samsung, but I haven't seen a Samsung knife. So, but, you know, like KitchenAid has been making industrial kitchen equipment for eons. I would trust a KitchenAid knife. And I like Cuisinart because they've been making kitchen appliances for for decades. So I trust them. They would make a good knife. But the majority of my knives are by a company called Hinkles. They're a German company. It's a little dude. I don't know if you can see that. But like there's this little dude, and these were the knives that I started with when I got out of culinary, and there's the knives that are my favorite. So now, last but not least, we're going to go into why you don't put your knives in the dishwasher. So the majority of knives have a steel blade, and the steel blade goes all the way through the hilt. And this is the hilt of the knife. And then it gets riveted, the grip material gets riveted onto the steel. Okay. Now, for those of you who know, water and steel are not really good friends. So what happens in a dishwasher is that the temperature gets really, really high. And it gets really, really hot. And depending on what material your knife is made out of, it may not react very well to those high temperatures in your dishwasher. And so the hilt starts to degrade, and these rivets can rust inside the knife. So, despite me telling my children and my husband and myself, don't put your knives in the damn dishwasher, this puppy went one too many times. Dun, dun, dun. And this is what happened. This little piece broke off. So that's problem number one. So you can see the tongue is exposed now. So then this part broke off too. And you can see the inside. You see how it's all rusty and it's all grody, and the little tongues broke off, and they look like they came off of the Titanic because they're all, you know, corroded and gross. So that's what happens. And so like this little tongue down here that's broken off, you can see it's still there see, it's still there. So I don't have an open hole. See right there? So I'm going to have to find a knife guy and have him fix this guy and reattach what got broken off, because this poor knife went one too many times in the dishwasher and it fell apart. And I have a couple other knives that the same thing happened with one too many trips in the dishwasher. That makes me sad. That makes me sad. But anyways, so that's your quickie tour of knives. Use what makes you feel comfortable. That's the thing about knives. I don't use the big pizza knives very often because pizza doesn't come to this house uncut very often. You see the ones that I have duplications of, that means that I use them a lot. The little paring knives, I use them if I'm just cutting up something real quick. This is my favorite size, this guy. And that's probably why he's dead, because I use him the most. But my other favorite knife, this guy. I like to use him. So, anyways, and it's just like everything else in your kitchen. You're going to discover, this is my favorite pot. This is my favorite pan. This is my favorite bowl. This is my favorite plate. This is my favorite cup. This is my favorite burner. You're going to discover that. And you're going to discover which one of your knives becomes your favorite. Now, if you ever have friends that know how to cook that are coming over to your house and you don't have a sharp knife, be prepared to hear some bitching if you're asking them to help you cook. That's happened to me more than once. So, when that happens, or I'm afraid, or I've been asked to come help somebody cook, this is what comes out. It's a knife wallet. Yes, it is a suitcase for your knives. Your chefs will tell you this is their little buddy. And it's got little flaps in here. And you can put your knives in there. And then you put the little flap down. And it protects your knives. And when this gets used is when I'm taking my knives to go see the knife doctor. And then you just put these little straps and buckle them all in. And boom. Your little babies are ready to go to the knife doctor because they're in your knife luggage. Because every good chef has one of these puppies. So there you go. How to sharpen a knife, how to make Fideo Loco, and sexy hunting stuff. Yeah. So there you go. So that's your story for tonight. And I tell you all about knives. And, oh, speaking of filleting fish, I'll give you a dad story. So my Papa Roy, he was an avid deep sea fisherman. Not like going out for marlin, but just like going out to the Pacific and catching some shit. Now, I grew up knowing sheephead bass, rock cod, barracuda, mahi-mahi. I grew up knowing all of the Pacific fish because my dad would bring them home. And so I kind of like, so one time I was at this museum and it was actually an aquarium, and they had these giant tanks with different fish from different oceans. So they had Atlantic fish, they had Pacific fish, and then they had like an Indian Ocean or Arctic fish or something like that. And so I'm sitting there and I'm not even looking. You know how they have ID cards to tell you, okay, these are the different fish you're looking at. And I'm just like, beep, 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 beep. You know, I knew all of them because I watched my dad cut them all up. So anyways, we had these neighbors. They were the Agabras. And Mike Agabra was a Hungarian. He was a super, super smart, super, super sweet guy. And my mom only knew how to make fish one way, and that was deep fried in beer batter. So it didn't matter if it was a rock cod or if it was a sheephead or if it was trout. It didn't matter. If my dad brought it home and it was fish, his job was to clean it up, and it was my mom's job to make it in deep fried in beer batter. Well, the Agabras had this Siamese cat, and the Siamese cat, as soon as my dad came home from fishing, I swear, every cat in the neighborhood goes, Mr. Pound's got fish, because what my dad would do is he'd gut the fish, he'd clean the fish, and he'd throw the fish bits at the cats, and the cats were like, yeah, we're getting fresh fish. They were so excited. You know, so one day, the Siamese comes over, and she could not wait for the fish bits to be chucked at her. So she got into the ice chest filled with fish, grabbed some long thing, if I remember correctly, it was a barracuda, and runs off with it. Now, mind you, this Siamese is about this big. This trout, or this, barracuda is about this long. So the cat is running, she's got it in her mouth, and it's hitting the ground, and she's, whoom, So they get in the backyard, and of course the cat's like not sharing. I was like, my spoils, I got this, and I ain't sharing. So to make up for them having to deal with cleaning up, fish guts, that their cat stole, my dad gave them a grouper, a good sized, beautiful fish. And well, Mr. Mike was one hell of a cook, and he gave it back to us cooked in a Hungarian style. And that's the very, very first time that I'd ever had fish that wasn't prepared as deep fried in beer batter. And I remember there was like olives and tomatoes, and it was really brothy and super yummy, and garlic and just yum. And I was like, I'm liking this. This is like really good. And so, and that's when I learned that, fish doesn't have to be deep fried with beer batter. That there's more than one way to cook a fish. And so over the years, I discovered a great, great appreciation for fish. My dad even said one time he was entertaining my mom's sister, my Aunt Berna. And Aunt Berna was going through nursing school. And she had a couple of girlfriends that were from the islands. They were like Samoan or Guamanian or Hawaiian or something like that. They were island girls. And my dad brought home a fish. And it was, fresh caught, and those girls attacked it and ate it raw. And my dad was freaking out, because it was like, can I cook it? And they're just like, oh, hell no, we like it this way, and the wonderful world of sushi and sashimi and all of that stuff, And even though he had been in Japan during World War II, the Japanese were trying to be very accommodating to Americans, and they didn't really serve, they served Japanese cuisine, of course, because, but they tried to make offerings that were more Western palatable, and fresh fish, raw fish was just kind of a weird thing for Americans. But then they, of course, grew to love it. And now it's, everywhere. And friggin' HEB is putting flaming Cheetos on sushi. But hey, it's Texas. We're just not going to talk about that. But anyways, so, jalapenos inside, flaming Cheetos on the outside of a California roll. It doesn't get more Tex-Mex than that. But anyways, so that's your tour for tonight of Penny's knife collection. I hope you enjoyed it. And me and my little babies are going to chop some stuff. So the Fideo Loco is done. And I'm probably going to grate some cheese and put that on top of that. Pepper jack. That sounds really good. But anyway, so that's tonight's dinner and movie. No. So live a day for the month of May. And my little tour of knives. So anyways, don't forget, I love you. And we'll see you next time. All right. Bye-bye.